You're never going to get rich renting out your time. It doesn't matter if you make $150 an hour or more. It just isn't scalable. This is not how you get rich. You get rich by recycling your money. Let me explain. I know doctors who make over $200,000 per year and they aren't rich. The reason is you can't save your way to wealth. Once I realized this, it made me question everything. That is when I discovered the loophole of how you actually get rich. You get rich by buying assets, things that go up in value, borrowing money tax-free against those assets, and buying more of them. You create an infinite loop of wealth building. Let me show you exactly what I mean. This is what I created called the money filtration system. I wrote an ebook called Money Isn't Real, and I deep dove into this subject. At first, you buy assets and you get the best return you can. I recommend strong growth ETFs. The reason I do that is it's a very powerful anchor. An anchor is something that keeps you diversified and it keeps you from moving too much up and down if the market is a little shaky. It does provide you a self-cleansing fund where as companies do poorly, they will get removed, and as they do well, they will get added. You don't have to make big decisions constantly. It's being managed for you. My anchor is VGT. In a little bit, I'll show you a couple other pieces of my portfolio and tell you a few more anchors that might be a good fit. After that, you then spend your money on credit cards and you borrow money on credit cards at low interest rates. Right now it's 4.9% for me. And then you use that money that you borrowed to then pay off those credit cards that you had spent money on, never paying any interest on the credit cards and stacking those rewards points. This allows you to compound forever. You never sell any shares. You never pay taxes because you don't pay taxes on debt. And you get to reap the rewards of dividends. You get to reap the rewards of infinite growth, meaning that you get to compound forever. It's just such a powerful system. And you can do this with real estate as well. My preference is stocks. Now, let me show you a little bit more of my portfolio here and how we're doing. Here, let's take a look at benchmarks and let's compare it to the S&P 500, which everyone loves to compare it to. Here you can see over the last year, I'm beating the S&P by, what is that, 6.5%, something like that. Year to date, I'm beating it by 6%. And then all time since 2022, I'm beating it by about 20%. Pretty decent. For the year, I'm up 30%. Year to date, I'm up 29%. And when we go over to the net worth, this is where you would have my total portfolio value minus my debt. You can see that it had skyrocketed after the tariff dip in April. The reason was because I used so much margin on the way down. I had borrowed over $100,000 to leverage up. I knew it was going to be short-lived, and then on the way up, I got to immensely reap those rewards. Year to date, it's just absolutely beautiful. I started the year at 256K net worth. We're almost up 180K net worth year to date just on my stock portfolio. This doesn't include my 401k, rentals, it doesn't include anything else. Now, I promised I would share some other anchors with you. Mine is VGT. Let me show you a couple other great options. So let's first take a look at VGT. Over the last 5 years, you would have doubled your money, almost doubled and a half your money. Your max graph looks like this. I know that's not all that's important because past returns aren't indicative of future results. Another great fund would be SCHG. This is very heavy in growth over the last few years. Over the last 5 years, you would have doubled your money and about 20% in addition to that. You could also take a look at VUG, which is essentially the same thing. You could also take a look at VUG, which is essentially the same thing as SCHG, or FTEC, which is essentially the same thing as VGT. Other than that, I think that the S&P 500 does play a piece in every good growth fund. It does very well. It's just a little bit slow for my taste. However, it does protect from some of that volatility during downturns. And it also does pay out a little bit more dividends, which does help with your margin payment. Let's talk about margin. Margin is a very powerful tool. You can essentially use your stock portfolio as collateral to then borrow against at very favorable interest rates to buy more assets. And you can do this during downturns where you can then buy very quickly. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine that there was a very big downturn during the tariffs and you would have only been able to dollar cost average maybe about $1,000 a month through this scenario. That would have been from February until maybe June. So February, March, April, May, June. You would have had 5 months to stack assets. If you could dollar cost average $1,000 a month, you would have put $5,000 in. I put $100,000 in during that same time. That's 20x more. That is why I got rewarded so handsomely when the tariffs ended and the market started to go back up. I owned so many more shares at a discount. Let's take a look at my last buy so you can see exactly how powerful this was. The last thing that I did buy, I remember, was VOO. And let's see what price I got it at. So to recap, it's at 628 as of today, November 13th. I bought it at $469 per share. About $150 per share lower than it is today. Let's take a look at the last price that I got VGT at. I got it at April 3rd, $515 per share. Today, it is worth $774 a share. This is the power of building a strong foundation and then using margin and leverage to buy much more very quickly when the market downturns, rather than dollar cost averaging your way in forever. I don't think that dollar cost averaging your way in forever is the way to do things. The reason that it's so powerful to use growth and to use debt as a tool is because you can get so much so quickly. And in the compound interest formula, there's two things that are important. One is time in the market, meaning the younger you are when you start, the more handsomely rewarded you will be over time. Two, you need to have a meaningful amount invested early. You can't do this if you're making $15 an hour and you can only dollar cost average $100 a month into the market. You need a meaningful amount invested early. Once I realized this, everything changed for me. I was 29 years old when I realized this. I'm only 33 now, and my portfolio has gone to the moon. Let me show you exactly what I mean. When I was 29 is when I started doing this, and now I'm 33 years old. That's 4 years. In those four and a half years, I went from $45,000 net worth in here up to $443,000 net worth in here. And again, keep in mind, this is only a piece of my net worth. I also own rentals. I do have a 401k. It has grown so fast, but I did decide that this is where I wanted to put my primary focus. Once you learn how to do this, everything is going to change for you. Lastly, I want to show you how important it is to track things. As soon as you start your investing journey, you should start tracking everything. You should track your total net worth in your portfolio. You should track your total value in your portfolio. You should track the dates, any notes where there's any big lump sums of money or money taken out, any debt, any bills from those debt, and by debt I mean margin, and then how much you get in dividends and your dividends all time, as well as your interest rate, because your interest rate in here is going to change. And keep in mind, it can as much as triple in a pretty short period of time. So do be prepared to have your interest rate triple. I don't think it would go to 15%, but you never know. If that were to happen, you want to make sure that you have the ability to be able to pay off that debt every month. Next, you want to make sure that you're tracking income and expenses. If you aren't doing this, you're going to get yourself into some trouble too. It can look as simple as this. You have income, you have your debts, you have your interest rates, and then you have your investments off to the side. And I did make another video about why I don't use an emergency fund. You can see here that I don't have any savings or emergency fund. Do whatever you see best fit. It's not a bad idea to have an emergency fund. I just want all of my money working for me. And what I also talk about in Money Isn't Real is the lazy paycheck versus the wealthy paycheck. Essentially, the lazy paycheck, your money is being divvied off into all of these different buckets, and you might get just a little bit of money that goes to your investments. But with the wealthy paycheck, all of your money goes into your investments. And then you borrow back at low interest rates to move that money into any other buckets that are necessary. I wouldn't borrow from my investments and pay interest on that to then fill up an emergency fund. I would just use this, and if there's an emergency, borrow from there to then cover my emergency. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. and see you next time.